I'm going to be the host today. So my name is Max. I started the Apache Superset project originally when I was at Airbnb in 2015. So that was the summer of 2015. Started as a 3-day hackathon project. And since then I've been working at Airbnb, Lyft, and last year, or about a year and a half ago, I started a company, Preset, that's around Apache Superset. So we're offering hosted Superset, but this is not what this is about today. It's really about this community meetup. Want to talk a little bit about COVID too. So just the fact that I think it's been definitely affecting our lives in intricate ways across the world. And I think we've all been trying to balance and adapt in all sorts of ways. And I think this virtual meetup, the fact that this is happening is what is leading us to host a virtual meetup, and it's kind of a new experiment. But I think it's much more inclusive. It's cool that not only the people in the Bay Area can come and can get up to speed and partake in the community. I think it's been really cool to have kind of technology and virtual communities, through this. So, the Superset community can be a little bit of a place where we feel a little bit less lonely, at least for me, every day. That's one of the online communities I'm part of it, and I think it's cool to have this outlet. I wanted to acknowledge too, so we have a lot of friends in the core of the community that are from companies that have been more directly affected from COVID too. So it's very real for us, over the past month or so, or a few weeks. I think people at Lyft and Airbnb have had a tough time too. So we really kind of feel it too. So thoughts, go in that direction. But luckily, most of the people that are part of this community have not been directly affected by that, which we're grateful for. But we're happy to provide support from that. One thing that's interesting is that the community is kind of unaffected directly from that. So we're still growing and accelerating very much. Part of it is at Preset, where we're investing a lot. We're growing a team too. So we're about 20 people total now, and trying to double again, as fast as we can. But we have about a dozen or so people working on pushing Superset forward as much as we can. So very much top of mind. And so I think we've seen through this period, and maybe since the last meetup, that we're still accelerating very much. And the project is doing very well through this. I think we definitely have the most ambitious roadmap to date, and then the community has the state of the union is strong. Cool. So wanted to so these are the words of welcome. I think I'm going to go get into the agenda here. So a few announcements. As I mentioned earlier, while people were joining, we're going to do committer self-introduction. So the committers that are here today, we're going to introduce the people here, and that will be the panel for the Q&A later. Ville's going to take the mic. So Ville's one of our committers, and he crafted the 036 release too. So he's been the release manager for that release. So he's going to be talking about what's in there, or we're going to be talking about what's in there. And then there will be a mic session. So if you want to talk to make announcements within the community, kind of this many-to-many flow of hey, maybe you're hiring, maybe you want to start working on a new project that's related to Superset or inside a feature in Superset, that's a good time to take the mic. I think we'll try the raise hand feature inside Zoom. We're all pretty new to conducting this kind of particular Zoom session. I think that's a little bit different from the Zoom we use every day. Cool. So that's the agenda. Announcement. So Bogdan, who's here with us today, was voted as a new PMC committer to the project. So Bogdan's come from originally Airbnb. So we worked together, I think it was in the fall of 2016 at Airbnb. That was before we joined the Apache Software Foundation. And now Bogdan's at Dropbox and starting to contribute again. And in the past too, he contributed a lot. So we're excited to have you on board, Bogdan. And then we've had 2 newsletters so far, and then we want to start communicating on a much better cadence too. So in the past, I think the information was kind of scattered. We've had these bi-weekly community meetings that are more for committers, like committers meeting that we have with people at Lyft and Airbnb, and people are welcome. But I think as a project and as a community, we haven't done a super great job at broadcasting information, like clear information as to what's going on. So we're starting to do that more. And there is a newsletter channel on the Superset Slack. So I invite people that want to get more involved in like, or either you might have like ideas for content for the newsletter, or you might want to partake in the process of like putting this together and vetting what goes in and what shouldn't go in. So please get involved if you're interested. More virtual meetups. I think like depending on what happens today, the feedback that we get, it looks like this is well attended. We have 70 people now on the line. So we're looking to probably have more of these, like as much of these as we think is makes sense for people. So we'll probably send surveys and find what the right cadence is. And then 036 is out. It's been out for a month, so it's kind of old news, but this is what we're talking about today. This slide is really just to act as a background while we introduce the committers that are here today. So I'll start with me. So I'm Max, as I said. I started the project a while ago, and I've been like pretty much like supersetting, like just committing, and my main focus in my professional life has been to like push Superset forward and really grow it and enable other people in the community at like coming in, contributing, and doing what I can to make Superset awesome. So that's what I've been up to. Maybe I'll point to the person on my right. I don't know if everyone sees the same gallery, but I know on my right here, I see Danielle. So I'm just gonna point to him that I can take it from here.
From me, you're telling?
Yeah, I'm just like it'd be good if we can all just say probably like for all the committers to say like who you are, where you work, what you do, maybe like areas of focus if there's like parts of the code base you're more actively contributing to, that sort of things.
Yeah, totally. So I'm Daniel Gaspar. I'm working with Preset, you guys, to pushing the Superset. Mainly revamping, refactoring, creating the new API on Superset, and well, lots of other things. Of course, also supporting Flask App Builder over there, and well, and that's it. Well, at my right, maybe Vil.
All right. Yeah, my name is Ville Brofelt. I live in Helsinki, Finland. I've been contributing to Superset for about 2 years, and I kind of started out mainly kind of making, I think, the SQL backend more robust, and then with time now I've started kind of working more on making the visualization plugins work better, and I've been working at Preset for about 2 months now. So then, okay, Eric, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure thing. I'm Eric Ritter. I'm a full stack engineer over at Airbnb. I've been working on Superset for about a year now, and my main focuses right now are more on the front end side of things. Published a SIP to get TypeScript. I'm adopted throughout the front end. So if anyone wants to migrate some of our files over to TypeScript, we would love your contributions. Let's go to Beto now.
All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Beto. I work at Lyft, and I've been contributing to Superset for 2.5 years now. At Lyft, we use a lot of geospatial data. So I worked on the geospatial visualizations. I worked in some of the connectors, so the Druid SQL connector, the Pinot connector, Google Spreadsheets connector. That's been like most of my work. With that said, I go over to Grace.
Hi, my name is Grace. I'm in Airbnb for 3 years. I started 3 years ago with Max, and I'm still with it. So most of my work is in front end, dashboard, filters, and and JS, all kinds of JS features. That's it. So let me see who is on my right. Uh,
Craig or Bogdan maybe next.
Craig, are you here?
Right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thanks. I'm Craig. So I work at Preset with Max. I've been there a little over a year now, and I have been a committer now for I think like 4 or 5 months, something like that. Although I've started committing a little over a year ago. I'm more on the back end and kind of infra side, so I've contributed a lot of like Docker stuff, and more recently helped out with some Helm changes, and a little bit of other kind of like deep in the weeds back end stuff. So yeah, that's about it for me. Let's see, looking at my list, who hasn't gone? I guess I could poke at Ty. He's the new committer.
Hey guys, my name's Ty. I also work at Preset and sit next to Craig when we're in the office. I just got in as a committer. Was excited to join. Though I have been kind of committing on and off to the project for about 8 months now, something like that. My main focus as of late has been in trying to refactor some of the backend rendered CRUD views to be React based. And eventually try to get us to more of a single page app infrastructure for the front end. So if any of that interests you, like definitely reach out and we could definitely use some contributions there. I guess Bogdan next.
Oh, cool. Right now I'm at Dropbox. Could used to work for Airbnb actually. I've been contributing on and off for the last few years, I would say. My main focus also as a Craig is actually infrastructure and backend. I did quite some work on permissions as well as actually a SQL backend. And I'll be looking for and planning to work on alerts in Superset as well in the future. Cool. I think John wasn't here yet. So John, want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm John. I work at Airbnb along with Eric and Grace and others. I pretty much solely work on backend stuff. I think in particular, like migrational work. I guess a couple of sort of pet hobbies or interests are sort of like around typing or like code quality. So if people want to like pitch in, we've got most of the backend type and all of it. There's also all this pylon stuff that we'd like to resolve as well. So yeah, just sort of, I kind of play sweeper a little bit, sort of bug fixing, migrational work and the likes.
I like the idea of like call to action, you know, like being like saying areas that are good for people to jump in and help too. Like maybe at open mic too, we can kind of highlight some of these areas too.
Yeah, and especially for like new contributors, like I think it's a good, like it's kind of grubby work, kind of some of the typing and the linting, but it's a really good way of like understanding the code base. And it's sort of like you don't need to have too much knowledge in order to do that. So I think it's a really good way if you want to, as a new contributor, if you want to get involved, I think it could really elevate the code quality, and it's probably a really good place to start. I think Rob, I'm from Preset.
Hey everyone, I'm actually not technically a Superset committer yet, but have been contributing for almost a year now. Focus area has been mainly on query performance, introducing things like PyArrow to our query workflow, and most recent contributions have been around helping define the new async query patterns in Superset to help performance go up. Hope to be a committer soon, just need to find more time to actually write code. Let's see. Are there any committers that have not gone yet?
That's most of us from what I see. Sylvia, I think, is a committer to facilitate. I think we did that, you know, to help her contribute as a PM too, and she's been contributing in all sorts of ways. Like, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Sylvia. I'm a product manager at Airbnb. Yes, I do not commit code. I contribute from a product side. Airbnb has a lot of users, so we get a lot of really helpful feedback and input from our users. So that's kind of what I like to channel.
There's a lot of ways to help too. I wanted to clarify too that this notion of committer is really specific to the Apache Software Foundation. So for better and for worse, and mostly for better, you know, we are an Apache Software Foundation project, and the Apache Software Foundation has a really clear and strict, well-defined like governance model for open source that's been like proven to work really well. And they define a committer as a contributor that has kind of graduated to get more rights. So really what that means is people with write access on GitHub that can, review and merge code. So, in the hierarchy of contribution, right, there's all sorts of ways that you can contribute. You can contribute code without being a committer. Committer is kind of giving you some rights on the repo, and PMC is the level kind of above that, as defined. So the project member committee is what it's called, and it's people who can vote on who else should be a committer or PMC member, or who can vote on whether a release should be kind of published. It's also possible for PMC member to define like new governance rules, but that's really unusual, right? We could say like, a new rule might be like, oh, we need to have 2 reviewers approve a PR to merge it or something like that, and then vote on that. The reality is like all of the committers are PMC members. We just needed more governance in the project. So all the people that you see here are committers and PMC members. And I think we forgot some. So Michelle is missing. I think Chris is missing. Jeff is here, but like there's more of us. But that gives you an idea of like the people who contribute and then who commit. And then there's much more on the contribution side. So let's talk about 036 so that we can get to Q&A too. Like I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, I got to make sure that we get to Q&A because this is a Q&A first and foremost. So I did this first slide, and then Ville's going to take it from here. The idea with this slide is I wanted to do a little bit of like an assessment of like what's in 036. There's 250 pull requests. So that's just a lot of stuff. So I try to do a tiny bit of analysis of like what's in there. So it's been 3 months since the latest release, 035.2. There's been 3 RCs, release candidates. That speaks to kind of the work that's necessary to put a release together. And I think in the past, like Ville, Danielle, and I, I've been pushing some of these releases. I think we're making it easier to make releases. That's what the bullet here like kind of shows. It's like in the releasing folder in the repo, we've put like there's some code, some documentation, and it's really not easy to put a release together. The iterative process to have like voting on releases, putting out release candidates, correcting issues, repackaging releases is pretty intense. But yeah, so 250 pull requests by 33 contributors. That means an average like 4-ish, PRs are getting merged by business days. It's really hard to keep up with everything. Like for me, like there was a time where I was able to keep up and understand everything that's gone on in a project, and it's harder to keep up. There's so much traction now. So I think we're going to start doing a better job at communicating more, in the form of like newsletters and meetups, so people know what's going on, like what are the key highlights in what we're merging and what we're working on. And all those stats here don't account for, we have a series of external repositories that are Superset UI that contain a lot of front-end code. It's like kind of our own front-end libraries that are reusable, as well as the plugins. So all the visualization code lives outside of the main repo, and that's not accounted for. So there's even more going on. On the right side here, the slide, I tried to look at the first word of the PR message. This is me playing with pandas in a notebook. And like, so there's at least like 50 bug fixes. And I think this analysis doesn't really do a good job at showing what this is about, but it gives an idea of like the first word of the PR message that we merged. I think in the future, we're looking to label stuff much better, label stuff with verticals, label stuff with the type of PR, so we can have like really good analytics as we craft releases. So I'm going to hand it over to Ville, who's going to take it from here. I think I'm going to stop sharing, and he's going to start sharing his screen from this point on.
All right, just 1 second. The good old question, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so yeah, so like Max said, there's a bunch of PRs in this release, and we don't have a lot of time to go into the details on all of them, but there's a few highlights that I wanted to lift out. And so with any release, something that we always try to do is support the community in adding all new database connectors. And for the 0.36 release, we were able to merge Dremio and Cockroach DB support. And I've been playing around with this Dremio connector, and it works really nice. So encourage you guys to try it out as well. And then this one really big feature that I think this was really requested several years ago already, and this was finally pushed over the finish line. So getting row-level security in, and I'll be doing a quick demo on how this works in a few minutes' time. And then just kind of in general, I think there's been a lot of work being put into Superset to make it kind of make it easier to be productive and making the user experience more consistent. And that there was, for instance, a function name auto-completion that was added to SQL Lab, and especially if you're writing a lot of SQL with SQL Lab, I encourage you guys to check that out. And this was actually added for Presto, but it's actually very easy to add for other databases as well. So I encourage you guys to check that out if this is something that you feel could make you more productive as well. And then the SIP 15, this was something that John was pushing, and I think this is actually very good because it makes these time intervals more consistent. Previously, you weren't really sure if you know, the start and end points were kind of including or excluding the date that was set. So going forward, this is kind of defaulting to the consistent convention, and this should make the charts more consistent in the future. And then I think the bulk of PRs usually are kind of boring, but important bug fixes and security and performance improvements. And I think I speak for everyone here when I say that our mantra kind of for releases is we try to make the next release always have kind of net less bugs than the previous one. And this is somewhere where I think that the community can really contribute, because you know, if we can get high quality bug tickets on GitHub, then those can be very actionable, and I think the majority of kind of bug tickets come from community members. So I really encourage everyone to kind of keep pushing those tickets. And like Max said, there's a lot of kind of you know, there's a lot of volume and stuff happening all the time. So some of these kind of get buried under the other tickets. So you know, don't be discouraged if your ticket doesn't get answered. If it doesn't, then bump it up if you think it needs to be addressed. So kind of keep pushing us, and then we don't try to ignore people. That is what I'm kind of trying to say. And then I think one really important performance improvement that Rob already touched on is migrating a bunch of the kind of internal pipes from pandas data frames to PyArrow tables. And we've actually seen a lot of performance improvements in SQL Lab, and we're looking to kind of leverage that stuff in the chart data pipelines as well. So that's something that we're looking to push more as we go into the next releases. All right, so I'm going to do a really quick demo here. We don't have a lot of time, but this is such an awesome feature that I kind of want to show how this works. And this was something that Altef, or kind of GitHub handle Altef, introduced. This was in late November last year, and this was merged in late February this year. A lot of work went into this, so 49 commits, 102 comments by this day, and this is actually very active still. So this is kind of this is an experimental feature for the time being, but it's kind of getting more robust all the time. And I think there's a few active PRs that are kind of looking to add some functionality to this. So do check it out, and it's easy to enable. So you essentially just go to the Superset config and add enable row level security equal to true, and then you get this in the UI for the administrator account. So what I did here is I made a kind of a mock example where I take the birth names example table from the example data set, and then I'm grouping. I'm making a pie chart where I'm grouping by gender, and as I've kind of highlighted, I don't have any filters here. So as expected, I'm getting a kind of a distribution between 50% girls and 50% boys. And so for this case, I might want to kind of limit who can see boy names and who can see girl names. So with this RLS feature, what I can do now is I can create a new role, which, for instance, if I want to enable someone to be able to see boy names, I create a new role called boys, and then I create one of these role level security filters where I attach this boys role to the birth names table, and then I specify this where clause, and in this case, this is gender equals boy. So essentially, this where clause is going to be appended to any kind of query that gets sent through to the backend. So once I've done that, then I can add this role to any user. And in this case, I have a person boy George, and I've added he's an alpha user, and I've added this boys role to him. And so what happens when he logs into Superset and he tries to make a chart on this birth names table, even though he doesn't have any filters chosen, he's only going to see boy names here in this pie chart. And if you check the view query tab, then you can see that this this gender equals boy has been appended to the where query. So I think really powerful, and you can do this in 2 minutes and have this kind of really powerful filtering added to your tables. So okay, so this kind of goes beyond the 0.36 release, but this is something I want to highlight because I saw that someone was already asking questions about this plugin re-architecture. So there's a SIP for this SIP 38, and essentially one of the big problems we had was the front end was very much coupled with the back end. So essentially, if you made a new plugin on the front end side, you actually had to add a lot of shims and a lot of kind of Python code in the back end to be able to kind of translate those queries coming from the front end in the back end and then being sent back to the front end. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to create kind of a chart data backend endpoint that doesn't care about what your visualization plugin is actually doing, as long as you specify all the parameters that are relevant for you. So in this case, if you want to make kind of you want to be grouping by gender and you want to have a sum of some metric, then that can all be kind of defined here in this API, and we've added kind of very extensive documentation here, so it should be fairly easy to kind of get going. And to make this kind of proof of concept work, we've now migrated the first chart over to this new chart API. So if you check out the master branch today, the word cloud that you're seeing in the examples is actually querying this new chart data endpoint. So this is kind of laying the groundworks now for being able to support much quicker visualization plugin development in the future. So with that kind of looking forward, so for Superset 0.37 and beyond, so like I said, SIP 38 is something that I'm more or less working full time on right now, and we're hoping to be able to kind of share this some kind of a proof of concept with you guys fairly soon, actually. And then SIP 34, for those of you who've been following that, there's a big design overhaul. The intent here is to make Superset kind of get to the 2020s essentially, and there's a lot of stuff there, and then Max will be talking a bit about this if we have time. Then global async query support, dashboard chart thumbnails. This was merged a while ago, and alerting functionality that Bogdan was talking about, and then of course lots and lots of more databases that I'm personally very kind of excited to make sure that Superset works with every single database out there. So feel free to reach out if you have a database that you need support for. and then bug fixes and performance improvements. So Max, if I'll pass over the mic to you.
Cool, let me unmute. And I was trying to answer some questions the best I could in the Q&A section, but we'll get into more live Q&A now. So I was just pointing out, I think like maybe people want to hear more about the roadmap too. Let me just share my screen too. I think like one piece of the roadmap for an open source project is really kind of the summation of the roadmaps of the different like sponsoring entities, right? So if like Airbnb have their own roadmap, Lyft has its own roadmap, Preset has its own roadmap, and we communicate around those at committers meetings, and we try to find opportunities for collaboration wherever it makes sense. One thing that we did around the roadmap is this Superset improvement proposal. So Superset's got this this process around improvement proposals that get voted on. So it's a way to communicate and have discussions on big changes or controversial changes or things that need kind of architectural review. And SIP 34 is really about, it was a proposal to establish a new design direction system and process for Superset. And we collaborated with people in the community, with people, you know, at Airbnb and Lyft at working with a design firm, and we push forward you know, what the future of the design of Superset is going to look like. So I could show a lot more of this. I have a presentation from the previous meetup, so some of you guys might have been there for the previous meetup. I'm going to show you very briefly what this is about, because I think it shows kind of an agreed upon design vision for the project. It's not a roadmap per se. I think we could get into roadmap too, but this sets more like long-term direction. Here, as I mentioned, so this process was mostly an interest group with people from Airbnb, Lyft, Preset. Preset sponsored this process and the work with the design firm called Cartel. They're just like two amazing guys, a really strong like designer in the data product space that we worked with. And then we look at essentially every single screen inside Superset. And I wish I could make this a little bit bigger.
Yeah,
So
Max, can we maybe do full screen on that? Some people are having a hard time seeing it.
Let's see, where's that button? I'm not used to Keynote.
The top left.
Got it. Yeah, here it is. And I'm gonna try to spend very little time on this, but I think there's gonna be a Q&A about the roadmap for sure. But this shows, say, the welcome page now is a list of dashboard, and we completely like rethought this, and this is what the vision for it is, at least at this time. That doesn't mean it's still up for discussion, but this is the best to our knowledge today. Similar, and that's showing this different aspect of this new welcome page. But we looked at every section of Superset, including the big complex one, like the Explore view, and really took a deep look as to like reorganizing the layout, the flows, the structure. And this is, to be clear, this is like wireframes. So we have, you know, origin was sketch file, and now we have Figma files, you know, that we can collaborate on as to like shaping the future and the direction of like where we're going with all of this. So this is like the evolution for, more specifically for the Explore view, the evolution for SQL Lab here, so you know the current view, and in the future, this is like the direction in which we're going at this time. And this is the dashboard view here, so a set of changes around dashboards and how it all works. So I'm just going to flash this very quickly for people. We could go really deep here, but I want like the Q&A to be really shaped by what people are thinking and asking on the challenge. And I'm happy to get back here and share some more around this. Cool. So do we want to proceed with the Q&A then? Who's the moderator?
Right here. So hey everybody. My name is Kevin. I also work at Preset primarily on the open source community side of things. So I'll kind of triage all the questions in Slido or Cydio, and or the Zoom Q&A. And there are a lot of overlap over here. So I'm going to kind of look at multiple screens as I pitch the questions out to different committers. Obviously, the one being upvoted the most is about the roadmap. Both Phil and Max talked about some components of it, but maybe if one of you guys want to go a little bit deeper into another item that wasn't talked about, right? So we kind of talk about the visualization side of things, also the plugin, but are there any other things that you guys wanted to share real quick to give a little bit more meat to the roadmap that people can look forward to?
Yeah, I want to open up to the people at Airbnb and Lyft too, if you have roadmap items you guys want to share. And I know you guys have been kind of hit to your pride of just coming back to your senses too in general, in these like times. Cool. I can talk a little bit more about the preset roadmap too, like just share a few items of things that are more around the corner and more immediate for us. So I think like executing on SIP34 is one of the main point of focus, and it's quite a puzzle, right? Because like SIP34, if you look into it, we're essentially redesigning every single screen in the app and making Superset more beautiful, more usable, fixing navigation, contributing to things like big topics like search, right? To make it easier to search for objects and find them. So how we're rolling this out is kind of intricate and complex, but we're executing in that direction, and you can kind of follow on GitHub kind of how we're going about all of this. Another point is the visualization plugin re-architecture. I think we could go much deeper into that, but like the vision around having a really strong plugin architecture allows us to do all sorts of things. There's this idea of like this ecosystem of plugins where different people can contribute all sorts of plugins. Some plugins that are maybe like better versions of the one that exists today, right? The line chart, could be better, and someone could submit an alternate line chart, and you could decide which line chart you want to use. Of course, we want to ship like a really good set of comprehensive, like top visualization plugin that people want to use. But I think it opens the door to doing things that are more specialized. So like genome visualization or other things, and we're really curious to see what that's gonna enable. Improving the data source connections, stability, compatibility with the databases people are using today. Working on like unit tests to prevent regression, making sure that Superset works super well with the Redshift, BigQuery, a Snowflake of the world, and that not only works well, but it keeps working well and gets the best out of these like database engine. Async query. So currently in the Superset architecture, I wish I had a diagram I could pull quickly, but essentially you have like web servers and async workers. The async workers are taking on harder work, doing a little bit more involved work and long work that takes less time, more time. And currently SQL Lab uses this async backend, but the visualization, the dashboard view, the Explorer view does not use it. So we want to move in the direction of having this more solid infrastructure. So running async queries optionally as needed, right, behind a feature flag. And then the big theme, and I think it kind of loops back into SIP34, improving navigation, discoverability, and just usability, like fixing all the flows, fixing all the layouts, and make Superset like a really competitive, like awesome product that you want to use. So that's like the short story around the roadmap here. Not sure if others want to add to the roadmap conversation.
I can speak a little bit to what Airbnb is working on right now. A lot of the stuff we're doing is more on the lines of customization and supporting Superset within a very large, like enterprise-ish environment. One of the big things is improving dashboard performance, and that's been adding a lot of customization about how to cache queries or cache charts that are loaded in dashboards. So really kind of solidifying up that cache warm-up logic, which should be usable by anyone who wants to preload dashboards in advance of coming into work in the morning. Another big one is customization around error messaging. and also just making the error message UX a lot more valuable to end users. One of the things that we saw a lot, and that kind of got discussed in SIP34 as well, is the general UX flow of the app, and both supporting the happy path and kind of the edge case paths, making sure that people know like what actions need to be taken when a chart fails to render or when a query fails to execute, and make sure that we really provide the necessary data for them to unblock themselves. That's some of the stuff that we're working on Airbnb's side.
Airbnb, we care about dashboard performance. So we add a lot of action logins in the dashboard. So user apply filter, switch tab in every single chart, how long it takes to load, how long to take a render, how the sequence, get things triggered. And we analysis log and trying to make a kind of suggestions for the dashboard builder to make their, they build a kind of efficient dashboard. Performance tune up for dashboard.
Yeah, it's so cool to have a large organization in the community that is pushing forward on scalability, because that creates a lot of headroom for the rest of us, right? So you can kind of see that with big projects like Hadoop, the fact that it was running at scale very well and super large companies made it really clear that it would work at, creates a lot of headroom for the rest of us. So we're trying to enable so we have a collaboration. I think we're all helping each other. We're trying to push in that direction too, and helping out.
I see a customer, I see a question about how to use a chart, to drill down the, so it's like touch some chart and drill down the rest of the dashboard to some category. So this was similar to our old feature that we use a table as a filter. And when you select a couple of rows and the whole dashboard get, propagate to the separate kind of rows, categories. And so, my coworker, Jess, and I are working on this. So last year we enriched the dashboard filter behavior, add the filter indicator filter scope, and somehow we lost this table filter feature. We are trying to bring it back and enrich to all the chart type that if you enable the chart to use it as a filter, we should allow you to use a filter, to use a chart as a drill down thing.
Cool. That's great. So one thing I want to make sure every participant notice as well. So there is actually a lot of questions being answered live by everybody, kind of off the side as we speak. And if you want to read some of those answers, so we won't get too repetitive, go to the Q&A button on the bottom and then click the answered column. There are like 11 items in there. And you can actually scroll through a bunch of answers being text answered already. So we won't go into those unless people want to, bring those items up again for like a verbal discussion. So I'm not going to talk about those, but definitely go through them because there are a lot of good materials in there already. The next question I want to put out there, people have been voting on it, is one by Hugo. How about embedding features in roadmap and filter integration to build a custom UI as front end for data consumers?
I think that's a good one for Airbnb. I know Airbnb is doing some embedding of Superset. Has been doing a lot of work in that direction.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to this. Embedded charts is like a really important piece of Superset that we use within Airbnb. And it's, I think, one of the reasons we've gotten as much buy-in as we have, because people are able to take the Superset backend and the Superset charting libraries and add them to their own applications, whether that's like more complex dashboards pulling from different sources or just adding it into like various status pages that they may have. So there is quite a bit of embedding functionality already within Superset. I believe there are docs for it on the Apache Superset page. If not, then that's definitely something that we should look into building out further to help you use that. I don't know if anyone else knows if docs exist.
Yeah, I can add more to that. There are popular example on storybooks, but to kind of trace back in time a little bit, like maybe 1.5 year ago, like the ways people are using Superset in another app is probably like iframing it. And we see the pain of like doing that and being unable to natively integrate the Superset chart in another app. So a lot of consideration were put into the plugins and those things to make you be able to include a Superset chart as a React component into your own app. And at Airbnb, we have built a kind of customized reporting app, which show a lot of metrics. We have a lot of different functionalities, but the chart components in there pull data from Superset and use the same like component for renderings. The trickiest part in doing such integration is not actually about calling React code, but it's more about configuring your CORS settings most of the times. Like try to make sure that like another app can make a call to the APIs and do the cross-origin calls.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on that too, and we had like a lot of conversation about embedding like throughout the years too. First thing, I like the idea of the vision of like being able to use the building blocks of Superset to build other apps that are not Superset, and like being able to tap at like different level and different layers of abstraction. One that's really clear is the data access layer. So the data access layer in Superset does things like auditing, caching, permissioning, and these things are, and it does a cross database kind of functionality too. So you don't necessarily need to know, you don't have to deal with drivers, right? Of like which database am I talking to, and actually like authoring SQL. So this idea of like making the data access layer something that people can use to build other product, I think is an awesome idea that people have been, I talked to a lot of people in the community, and that's been done in many, many places already, even though the API was not public, right, for that. So now we're making the API more public, more open to formalize that. Then there's this idea of like visualization components. So there's a lot of visualization libraries out there that are great and that we're using some of them, and some of them you should just use if you're building front ends or data products. But there's this idea of building data visualization components that are aware of a Superset backend, right? So think about like if you were able to just reference a Superset chart in your React app, just import that and parameterize it so that this component is stateful and it knows how to communicate with the Superset backend. So you don't have to write any backend code to make an interactive application. There's also this idea of like embedding a subset of the Explore view. So if you're familiar with the Explore view, it's essentially a place where you can slice and dice. But picture you could bring in your app not only a data visualization, or but a data visualization that's interactive, where you control what components are interactive. So you could say, I'm going to show the date picker and the metric selector, but I'm not going to show certain other controls that could be overwhelming for my user. So I think that we'd love to grow in that direction too, of like easily embeddable native component, not through iframes, that are interactive. And it gets tricky. Sometimes you want to control them, sometimes you don't. So we would allow for these different layers of interaction. Do you want like a fully contained stateful component, or a component that's more managed by you?
Cool. So another question that people wanted some answer on is, can you share what is preset and how it's linked to Superset? This feels like a Max question.
Yeah, certainly. So I think that there's probably a lot to say here. So the first thing I want to say is like kind of the premise for starting preset, like where we come from and where we position ourselves and how we interact with the community. So when I decided to start a company, so that was like about a year and a half ago, the main goal was like my life's goal has been to really push Superset forward through open source, right? To make Superset everything that it can be. And I thought the best way to do that was to move out of the sponsoring organizations. I've been working at Airbnb and Lyft, and it's been great. And these organizations are awesome. They're like they've been sponsoring the project. They've been very open and helpful. But my vision for the project was like, I want to grow a very large product development team. I want to, enable to pay people to work on like user documentation, on all sorts of things that need attention, like documentation. And I also wanted to make it really easy for people to get a hosted version of Superset. So those are the main goals for Preset, is to grow the Superset community and offer the absolute best kind of hosted solution for Superset. Of course, we need to differentiate and have revenue too. So on top of building, a hosted version of Superset, we're probably going to build more crust. So there's this idea of open core and open source. That's like, hey, you have a core that's open, and you can build things and other like services under a platform that are complementary to this one. But for us, having a successful company around Superset starts with having a thriving Superset community. So that's really kind of what we're after. When I decided to create a company too, I sent a long email to the community. I could resurface kind of stating what the goals and the way we're thinking about interfacing with the community is. And then I got all the committers in a room too, and we all got together and we talked about, how we can work together. But the main thing for us is like, we absolutely want to, for Superset to become, to be extremely kind of disruptive and a very strong open source product that's used in a lot of places. And for us, it's to offer, and then for Preset, the goal is to offer the best hosted version for this through the community, right? Through a strong open source project. I think we have a pretty clear framework too of how we contribute to the community and what are areas where we might not contribute back certain things to build like some differentiators, right? So things that typically cater more to the enterprise, we're more interested to build that on our own, right? The wrapper around Superset, everything around hosting, around like the cloud service, is something that stays under the Preset umbrella and less under Superset. So generally, like everything that caters to the users, we want to contribute back as much as possible, and everything that caters to the enterprise is more like on a case-by-case basis as to whether we want to differentiate and keep that in a Preset layer. Happy to talk some more about that. I think it's what we've seen, in the history of like commercial open source companies, is that it can really help the open source project to have a strong kind of sponsoring organization that's like venture backed behind it. And then that's some of our primary goals here, is to help the project first, like grow the pie, and then figure out like what is the slice of the pie that we can kind of take for Preset by adding value. So hopefully that answers the question.
Awesome. So I know we're bumping up against the hour, but since we did a lot of intros and presentation stuff, figure we do maybe 2 more questions. And obviously anyone who has questions that we didn't get to, ping us on Slack or find us in other ways, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. One other question here on Slido is there documentation for creating custom visualizations? Is there flexibility in terms of charting library? And how decoupled is the data querying with the visualization? Maybe, I think we might have answered that a little bit in other ways already, but figure one of you guys might want to just kind of clarify some of those points for the community. Since we're recording this as well, it'd be good for others who are going to watch this later to hear it.
Should I perhaps take that question? So I think the main bottleneck up until now was the fact that it was very much coupled, and I think the bulk of the work up until now has been in decoupling and understanding how we can actually decouple these things so that we can have Viz plugin development happening in isolation from the back end. And I think we've actually kind of reached the point where we've been able to decouple them. So I think this is the point in time when we can actually start doing some of the more exciting stuff, and that's something we'll be kind of communicating out within the coming months if everything goes smoothly.
Yeah, kind of want to add that like in the recent month, there has been a lot of great development on multiple ends. One is the API. Now we have a solid like V1 chart data with documentation. Before that, it was kind of like duct tape-ish together. There was no documentation, like no like playground to test the API. Now like we have that figured out. Another thing is like when we decided to break out the repository into multiple ones, we have to use npm link to kind of connect them. And working with multiple repo has been challenging in the past, but with Jesse's recent change to like how a lot of script work, like now the npm link are more magical and like it smooths out the development process. We have like a few kind of example templates on like new charts view update with all the new example, and maybe it's something we can kind of like clone out or modify from that in the future. Right now, there's no kind of written documentation or anything, but in the coming months, there should be more clarity on that.
I think like we're at a place where we can really have good documentation on this very soon. I think definitely a next step of like how to like a Hello World plugin that people can take and modify easily. This is like I wanted to have open mic too, so if people have things they want to say, I think there's a feature too that you can raise your hand on Slack on Zoom. I'm trying to see if there's any like hand on the attendee side, but if you want to raise your hand and do a PSA, there's no one. Maybe I'll do my announcement. So one thing is at Preset we're hiring, so we're growing a Superset company, and we want to contribute heavily. So if you want to contribute to open source, contribute to Superset as your main job, as an engineer, as a designer, as a PM, as an EM, we're hiring across the board. So that's one announcement, and I'll go with another one where. We have an alpha program, so we're looking for people to partner with us, and it's not like a mercantile. So there's at the beginning we're really looking for people that want hosted Superset. That's like manage, maintain, upgraded for you. You don't have to be on call for it. We're on call for it, and I want to partner, partner with us on this like early version of hosted Superset. Please engage with us.
Okay, great. Well, that takes us to the top of the hour. I want to thank all the committers for joining in and answering questions. This is a recorded session, so we'll send this out to everybody. We really appreciate you guys all joining. We'll probably send a survey out as well after this, just to get some feedback on the event and the format in which that we are doing this. And so hopefully we can do this again soon. And look out for our newsletter that we will be sending out monthly. And so encourage you guys to join our Slack channel if you guys have any questions around Superset as well. So again, appreciate your guys' time and joining our first Superset virtual meetup. Thanks, guys.